I started flipping. I've been a realtor now for almost 12 years, and I've had my own brokerage and I've built my business. Um, I guess it was I would say exactly 2 or 3 years ago, 2 years ago, I want to say. Um, 2 years ago, I now I want to say three, but anyway, that's neither here nor there. I realized that I was missing out on a lot of opportunities. So a lot of my clients were basically making money off of investments that I found them, which was great. I was getting commission, they were building their wealth, but I had gotten a property to list that I just knew I couldn't really sell as a regular sale. And I gave to a friend of mine who he was able to purchase the property and he was able to make like $60,000 or $80,000 on it. And I was like, wow, that was great. And then in return, he gave me a property and it was another fix and flip, and it was in the same community that I had been living. And I was in the process, I had rented for a year when I moved to West Miramar. And there was a property in the community that he gave me, and I wasn't in the position to take it myself. And the people that I sold it to ended up making like over $100,000 on that flip, and it was a really easy flip. So at that point, I was kind of like kicking myself. I'm like, okay, I just lost two really big opportunities back to back where there was like $180,000 in profit made. So simultaneously, I had bought my house here and I was doing some renovations, and I kind of hit it off with the guy doing the renovations. He had a great energy, he was hardworking, and he wanted to get into flipping. So we started to talk and we realized we had all the pieces of the puzzle. So thanks to Leopold Manuel, who's our North Miami partner, um, he had given me like basically the roadmap as to what to do to flip a house. So my new partner, who was the guy who had been renovating my house, and I found a house, and then I found a second house, and we immediately started to do really well. And in our first year, we were able to do, I think, like 12 houses. We did great. We didn't even really hit a roadblock in that whole first year. One house, right as the market shifted, we lost a little bit on, just because I wanted to just get rid of it quickly, because I don't know who was in the business a few years ago, but there was like a really significant point where sales dropped when interest rates went up. So I just wanted to jump out for a minute and watch the market stabilize. But other than that, we did really well. We were making like 30 grand at a minimum, and we've made like 100 grand on some. And it was just a great year. That year, you didn't even really have to make the outside look that good. Just literally everything was that way. It was just it just sold. So there's a couple of things. Then I mean, we continued to do it as well. So at this point, I mean, and I want to tell you, one, for how you flip yourself, and two, for how you can help a client become a flipper. Because I don't know who follows my social media, but I'm a pretty big listing agent, but a lot of my listings are because I create the listings, or I have clients that are creating the listings. So basically, I handpicked several of my clients and friends, and I taught them how to become rehabbers. And because I taught them how to become rehabbers, I always have listings. So I find them to buy. Sometimes I don't make a lot of money on the buy. I don't really focus on that, but I get the listings. So I'm constantly getting listings. So what do you look for? You want to find a property that has like meat in it. So let's say I look on the MLS, I buy a lot off market, which is called the wholesale market. They come in lists. There's not one website I can send you to, which just sort of, as you're in the business, you get more and more people sending you properties. But for example, I look for a minimum, a lot of people go with percent. I look for a minimum of, on a regular mid-price listing, $160,000. I want to know that my client can walk away realistically with a $30,000 minimum profit. So I'm going to share the white screen now. So just bear with me, because I am not a Zoom. We'll close the white. Can anyone see the whiteboard now?
It's up.
It's up? Okay. Let me see how I can see it. I can't see my own whiteboard. Okay, I think I can. There we go. Is that it? No, that's not it. Okay, well, I know what it says, so I'm just going to, now I can't see any of you. What did I do? Okay, there. I'm just gonna talk through it because I can't see my whiteboard. So essentially, if you see at the top, there's a purchase price of $400,000, right? And there's an ARV of $560,000. So that means that there's, and I'm doing this off memory, so jump in and correct me if I'm wrong at any point. Why? Yeah.
Sherry, I sent it to you via text so that you see what you're looking at.
Thank you, Marcial.
Okay.
That's a lot better. Thank you, that I'm not winging it. So the $400,000 house, we're gonna say that there's a 20% down purchase. So the loan's gonna be 20% out of pocket, and you're gonna get 100% towards your rehab. Now, as your client or yourself has more experience, they can put down 10 or 15% instead of 20%. But to start, let's just say it's 20%. So they're gonna come out of pocket on their down payment, $80,000. So they're gonna have 100% of rehab, but they're still gonna have carrying costs and closing costs. So you know that that the loan amount then is gonna be 320,000. So your calculations aren't on the purchase price, your calculations are on the loan amount. So your closing costs, now I'm just estimating, but just based on experience, say around $6,000. Now your lender is gonna charge anywhere from 2 to 4 points. So I just used 2.5 in this example. So the 2.5% of 320,000, again, not 400, is 8,000. The carrying cost for 3 to 4 months, which is about the average time you're going to have this house by the time you close on the sale, at 11% interest, which this can go anywhere between 10 and 12%, is 8,800. You calculate that by the loan amount times the percentage of the interest divided by 12. So in this case, that's going to be $8,800 for, I think I used 4 months. The taxes and the insurance for 3 to 4 months, I just estimated at 2,500. And I estimated on this particular house, just a random number, that the rehab cost would be 60,000. Sometimes they're 40, sometimes they're 80, sometimes there's 100. We can go into what you're going to expect in a rehab like a little bit later, but I just used 60 in this example. So also then you're going to sell it, and you're going to sell it, which is your ARV, which you think you can sell it for $560,000. So if you add up all of those expenses, which also include the commission of 5% at 560,000, because you have to pay yourself and you have to pay another realtor, or if you get both sides, that's 28,000. The closing costs, say again, now we're just guesstimating, but it's 8,000. So when you add up all of those items, they're going to come out to 121,300. So that's your costs, that's your rehab, that's your points to your lender, that's your carrying cost, that's your commissions, and your house cost, which was 400,000. So make sure you don't count the down payment twice. So if you're using 400, you're not counting the 80 that the person put down, because I've seen people do that multiple times. So the net for this particular property is $38,700. This is a very typical flip. People think they're going to say like, oh, I bought the house for 400 and I'm selling it for 560 and it's going to cost me 60,000 to rehab. I'm going to make 100,000. Like, no, it never works out that way. Unless they're a cash buyer, they don't have holding costs. They have a little higher return, but they miss commission, they miss everything. So you really have to sit down and know how to do this math. It's really simple, but know the formulas. So basically, if you want to sell the idea to someone, they invested in this particular sale out of pocket around 103,000. The return was 37.5%, and that was in 3 to 4 months of having this property. Because usually, I would say with this market, it's closer to 4 months if they're working hard and quickly. That's a great return. I mean, if they were to replicate that 3 times in a year with the same money, they just made what, 120% on their cash investment. So after you do several properties, the banks start to give you like where you can put down 10% or 15%. As you get more experience, they give you less and less and less. So that's something to let them know also. So the same person who came out of pocket with an $80,000 down payment can eventually come out of pocket for the same house with a $40,000 down payment. That's pretty typical of all banks. The more experience you have, the less money you have to come out of pocket. So what are some of the caveats? So when you're looking for a property, how do you know what the ARV is? you want to look within, I use RPR. I use it, the app I find to be much easier than the website for this particular thing. Then I look within half a mile and I look back 6 months and I look for highly renovated properties. So I look for the same similar square footage and I look for properties that are pretty immaculate. They've just been completed in a way that I expect my investor will complete it. And then I get an idea. I don't use like if
I'm
there's
sorry, what was the name of the app?
it's through the MLS, it's RPR.
RPR, okay. Thank you, sorry.
Okay, so and if you have any questions, I'll type in the chat my phone number. You can always text me as well. Or I'll give it, let me do that now so I don't forget. Hold on, chat. Yeah. There, so everyone can get that. So you don't want to use like, this is a mistake that I used to make. There'd be like 3 flips that sold for 550 and 1 that sold for 650. And I'd be like, wow, we can sell for up to 650. Sometimes there's just that odd sale and you really like, you can bump it up a little. Well, if one sold for 650 and most of them sold for 550, let's push the 550 a little bit and say, maybe we can sell for 570. And of course you're factoring in bedrooms, bathrooms, that's a whole nother, this whole nother Zoom square footage, but just to be really general, but you don't want to just take that like off the wall highest comp and say that's your ARV because you'll get hurt in the end. You want to lean a little more to conservative because it's better your client makes or you make more money than expected than less money than expected, because one mistake can make like a profit turn into a negative pretty quickly. So you have to keep that in mind. The work, I used to say it would be like 40,000 to 50,000. Now I say 60 because every prices just went up, labor went up. You want to pay attention, does the roof need done or not? If it needs to be done, factor in another like 12 to 14,000. Is your client going to do windows or not? That's usually around 10,000. Then the average thing is you're going to do kitchen. You're going to usually have a 3-2 or 4-2, so 2 bathrooms. You're going to have to do floors. You're going to paint inside and outside. Sometimes there's, you need to replace a panel, which can, add to the cost a little bit. Sometimes there's a little plumbing issue, but generally speaking, they're all really in the same range because all of the issues don't hit at once. So you can usually guesstimate without the roof and without, I want to say without the roof and without windows, 50 to 60,000. If you're doing windows, go closer to 60 to 70. And if you're doing the roof, like, and the windows, all of the above, then you're going to be like 80 to 85. That's just in an average house. I do a lot in Miami Gardens and a lot in Central Miramar, and generally that's like always the prices for flipping. What do you need before you enter into any of this? I would say a good worker, like whoever's going to be doing the work, you need to know they're reliable. You need to know they're working quickly, because every month is, again, if you look at the carrying cost, every month is costing you thousands of dollars. So if they're taking 2 extra months, it's like increasing the carrying cost. It's taking away from your ability to do another property. So you really want to make sure you have someone who's there working with you. Well, I would have them in place before you even put an offer on a property. Same, if you're going to work with, for instance, there's Kiavi, there's other lenders that do the rehab. You want to talk to them first. There's lenders who just loan you the money but don't give you the rehab. They're usually a little bit easier and quicker. If your client's not short on money for the rehab, that's probably a better choice. But those are the aspects that you want to take care of first, is the lender, have them in mind, and the crew that they're going to work with. And then you also want to make sure that that funds are in place. When you buy cash properties, and this is extremely important, usually you don't have an inspection period. So once you go under contract, you're under contract. And if you change your mind, you're probably going to put your client's deposit at risk. There's no financing contingency, even if they're using a hard money loan, it's the same as cash. And there's usually, not always, no inspection period. So you try to get into it before you put the offer, or a lot of times people do sight unseen. I don't necessarily recommend it. I do it, but it can definitely backfire as well. So those are those are most of the issues. And also, obviously, before you put any offer for yourself or your client, you want to look at the ARV, which again is the after repair value, what you're going to sell it for, and make sure that the numbers work. And again, I use at the very minimum on a property that doesn't have like extra work. I want at least $160,000 difference between the purchase and the sale, to make sure that my client, even if things go wrong, they'll make at least something. Any questions? Did I lose everyone?
No, it's been great. Thank you for the information.
So also, I made a big mistake, for a client last year that I probably didn't anticipate at all. Well, it wasn't my mistake. He picked the property and numerically everything looked good. I looked at comps for him and it looked like he was gonna make a ton of money. And one thing, and I don't really know how to explain this tangibly, but within the areas, there's like micro areas. So sometimes like it's really important to look within the immediate couple of blocks as to where the house is. Like in this case, it was in like Oakland Park area. And the comps would look like they were amazing, but the little area where he bought the house, the comps weren't as amazing. And we weren't able to get the house sold and it sat forever. And it wasn't just his house. A friend of mine had, he was west of 75 in Oakland Park, and a friend of mine did a flip east of 75, east of 95, what am I saying, 75? And we just, neither of us could get those houses sold. And I mean, it was really frustrating. It was the boy's first flip. He was really young. He did a pretty good job on it, but certain areas aren't like others. There's areas that are just really, you know, your area, you know where you live. There's certain areas where houses just don't sit on the market. So if you try to, you know, if you do pick an area where houses sell quickly, that's what I'm trying to say. And your client will be a lot happier, you'll be a lot happier. The profit margins that I look for is a minimum of like, and this, remember, if it's yourself, you're also getting your commission, but if it's for a client, your commission is being subtracted. So for them, I want to know that they're going to make at least, like, I say 30, but I really like them to make at least 35. And if they make more than 50, I'm really happy. I have a flipper who he always has like 4 to 6 flips going on at a time. And he's a cash buyer. He probably makes 80 on every flip. He's just really good at negotiating. He gets a lot of
$80,000. Unbelievable.
Yeah, he's amazing. He negotiates with the purchases. He gets the workers to work for cheap, and he's not paying expenses because he's cash. So if he can't get that, he doesn't do it. So there's a big range, but most of my flippers, as long as they're getting 30,000, 40,000, they're happy.
Where do you get your properties? Because I'm working with wholesalers, and everything that they sell, they offer like, I'm not doing the numbers, I'm doing the return on investment. I
Yeah.
want to make at least 15% return on my investment when I'm looking for a flip minimum. And
Mhm.
everything else that's on the market, sell to Bobby or some other wholesalers, it's barely 12, barely, with cash. So where do you get your properties
I mean,
from?
I use Sell to Bobby. I'm particular with them. We just purchased one from them. I think they have really good ones and they have so-so ones. Like there's Rich's list, there's different lists that a lot of
You
people
work with
use.
Seda as well, right?
What is it?
Seda is your manager, right?
Yeah, Saida, exactly. Yeah. And I mean, I lost a property the other day with them that I thought was really good. So they definitely have good properties. It's just a matter of knowing which one is good. And you have to be quick. Remember, like with Sell to Bobby especially, they last like a day. Like if they're good, literally like an hour. The one I lost the other day, we went to the bank, deposited, signed the assignment, and still lost the property because someone beat us by a minute. So
Sherry, tell me about sight unseen. How confident you are, and like, do you drive, like you said, with this micro region? Are you driving by before you
yeah.
make it?
Whenever I haven't driven by, it's always been a mistake on my part. You drive by, you look around the neighborhood, you look very specifically at what you're, you know, the area that you're buying. RPR will pull up especially if you're buying sight unseen, you want to be very particular. Because, if you're not driving by, you're not doing, if you try to walk, like sometimes you can't walk the property, but if you can walk the property. One horror story, we've done fine with sight unseens. Leo buys tons of sight unseens. My clients were really, really determined to buy a sight unseen in Pembroke Pines, and there were some hoarders. And when we went inside, underneath the hoarding, from the video, usually they'll send you videos and pictures for sight unseens, but underneath all of the piles, and I'm talking like the entire rooms were filled with stuff. And underneath that, the floor was completely caved in and eaten by termites. And that's a major, major complication, because now you have to put like structure beneath the floor, like to make it.
But can you go and renegotiate? Like basically they didn't disclose it and you are not able to see it based on the materials they provided. Are they flexible on that? Because I've heard some stories.
I mean, people have and people can. It's not a guarantee. We weren't able to in that case. The other thing you have to be careful with, like with Kiavi or some different lenders, they, so like if I use Vinny doesn't require an appraisal. If I use another company, that's a lender of mine, they do like a valuation, but they don't need to go inside. There's other lenders that need to do an interior appraisal, and a lot of them don't want to give you access. So you have to know the lender that you're using, and you have to specify that ahead of time also. One other thing that I should bring up also is if you're getting an assignment, say you're like, so guys, there's like MLS, and where we're talking about is they're wholesale deals, they're off markets. So they put the property usually, sometimes there's double closing, but 9 out of 10 times, they're gonna put the property under contract and they're gonna assign it. So you know when you check on the contract, is this assignable? And like for a regular deal, we put unassignable. Well, in this case, it is assignable, and then they assign it to us. So I'm corporation 123. So they're whoever, ABC Investments sent, assigning to corporation 123. So now there's an assignment. I don't have the actual contract. But for some lenders, I have to have access to that original contract and not blacked out. So you need to stipulate that as well, because that can come bite you if you cannot get that initial contract, if the seller won't give you that and you need it.
So basically, once you sign the assignment and do the escrow, you request the original contract, even with the blacked out the amount, because you don't care about how much they sell it for, right?
Yeah, I
You
mean,
have to
but
have the
the
original to
lender,
make
the
sure the
lender
terms-
does. So you want to add on the terms that they give you that the full contract will be provided per lender's request. You also want to look, if an appraisal is needed, access will be granted for an appraisal within this period of time. Because if your lender's requiring an appraisal and they don't give access, what happens to your deal? And then what happens to your deposit? Because you have no financing contingency. So those are really important things. The other
Thank
thing
you very
is,
much.
on the assignment, you have to
Oh.
also look at all the fine print, because they're charging a lot of times, which sometimes you just do it, but they're gonna charge you seller's closing costs, or yeah, so they're gonna charge you all of the closing costs. So you're gonna pay for the seller's closing costs, your closing costs, everything in between. You wanna read that. You wanna make sure that it says the same way we put free and clear. They always try to get out of this, of violations, liens, and open permits. Make sure it's in there. Because otherwise there can be a violation and you're accepting it. Because that's not clear on the initial contract. So make sure, and like if you do nothing else and get nothing else out of this, make sure that you put on those extra terms, make sure they put, whether it's a wholesaler, MLS or anything, property will provided free of any liens, violations, and or open permit or permit issues.
Thank you very much. It's very helpful. I'm writing down. Last question. What do you think about the properties that have tenants? Because some of them are selling either with tenants or with post occupancy. What do you think about those? Do you
The
consider
post
those?
occupancy, I don't mind. The tenants, I don't do, because I don't want to be in, I hate evictions. I don't like confrontation. So for me, I just feel like if there's a tenant that won't leave, a lot of times they're non-paying tenants. A lot of times they're tenants that can't get out of the property. And I would rather just not deal with it. It's not to say don't, but it's just me personally, I don't.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
It's a really fun and addictive part of the business. It can build your business, but you just have to be really careful and really thorough because just every day in real estate, we're taking people's money, you know, at risk basically on our good judgment, on our decisions that we help them make. But with flipping especially, like they kind of win or lose based on the advice we give them. So you just have to be really thorough on all of these things. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. I'm not great with answering the phone, but I'm great at responding to text. So, and not WhatsApps, just text me.
Gotcha. So last question, what do you think about MLS deals? Are you guys picking anything up from MLS?
So my client that I said makes a lot of money in his flips, he negotiates a lot of his buys himself, and he gets almost, I would say 50% he gets off of the MLS. He just got a new one today and he beat out everyone because he'll call the realtor directly, he'll talk a lot to them, and he gets the
Unbelievable.
best deals on the MLS. But if you're trying to work as a realtor, it's really hard because a lot of times they're gonna, like, I almost tell my clients to go directly to the other agent.
Yeah, I do the same. One deal that we got, it was from MLS. We offered double commission to the seller's agent and we were able to close. But
Yep.
most of the time you call them and they're like 30 people ahead of you, and whoever gets the cheapest labor wins the contract. This
Yeah.
is how it works. For the new listings, like if we're talking about distressed that are on MLS, it's hard to compete with other bidders. But I try to go over the expired or over the long time on the market, like 3 months, 4 months on the market, and those are much easier negotiable.
Yeah. Definitely. Getting properties directly. Very rarely, because I don't, and I really always put this in my plan, like to door knock and try to get like my own deals. I think it's the absolute best thing that you can do. I love to say I do it, Ivan, but honestly, I don't, just because I haven't, I just haven't yet. But I think there's a lot of neighborhoods, like the key is to look in neighborhoods that are like coming up. So if there's an area where there's a lot of older homes, older people that are like retiring, selling, moving to condos, and then you see a lot of younger families buying and renovating, that's a great neighborhood to go work on. Door knocking and trying to see if you can at least get a fair deal from them. That's what the wholesalers do. And unfortunately, a lot of times they're kind of cunning and they really take some of these older people for a ride, which I don't believe in that either.
Sherry, going back to your remark regarding violations, liens, and open permits. So when it is wholesale, it's understandable. But sometimes I come across listings distressed, and they say buyer to assume all liens and violations, and I call them and they say, oh, violation like $50,000. Would
Yeah,
you
well,
deal with them?
you can mitigate it. I mean, so if it's a lien, you can mitigate the lien. Usually, you know, depending on the city, you can get it knocked down sometimes to like 10%. I took a property a year and like 4 months ago with a garage that had a violation. It was turned into a room in like 1982, and I thought it would be a 3-month project. And I'll tell you what, I'm still sitting in that flip right now. Some cities are not easy to work with. It's not that it's hard to do, it's just they're super slow. And if you get a bad contractor, there's so many variables. I'm finally like on my way out of it now, but it's been like a hell of a year with that house. And I probably would never do that again. It was a violation, not a lien. But especially in the city of Miramar, and there's some other cities, like they are just slow as can be for everything. So
So
be
basically, if the liens are pretending to, like, there were liens that I came across, they were like for noise or for rats or for, you know, for loud AC. So if they're not structural, that something
Yeah.
can be fought. But if you
Yeah.
have to change something, you better not to go with them, right?
Exactly. If it's just
Yeah.
for like the grass wasn't cut or something like that, or a driveway, like those are pretty easy to fix. So you can, you know, mitigate it. Just ask the city what their normal is for, and make sure they know that it's an LLC buying it and not an end user. Because sometimes it's different also if it's an end user versus an LLC. Or corporation.
I have a question. How do you get the city to lower the prices of those?
It's just they have like a process, so you go to the lien department and tell them that you're a new owner and you just want to negotiate it, and usually, like, you might have to go in front of the commissioners. And it's not like a judge, but it's like a courtroom, and they'll drop the price for you, or they'll give you extra time to remedy those kinds of things. And usually the cities want someone who's gonna fix the property, so most of them, not all of them, are pretty easy to work with in this regard.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? I can tell you it's a great strategy, it's a great thing, I was really able to shift my business. As much as I love flipping for myself, I was able to shift my business from being more on the buyer side to being primarily a listing agent now. My team works the buyers. So one, that's been great. And two, like, I've also watched multiple people's lives change. I mean, one of my partners, he had a great government job, but now he's doing really well because he flips houses. Another friend of mine, the same way, like, for the majority of her income, she's a mom with kids, but the majority of her income is coming from being a rehabber. So you really impact people's lives if you can guide them in the right direction, and you really change the nature of your business also. So whether you're flipping for yourself or you're working as an agent for a rehabber, I think it's just beneficial. And it's not without stress. There's a lot of stress, but I think it's a win-win for everyone involved.